We've had so many responses to our first comparison of Superbirds to Daytonas, we thought maybe we ought to do a follow-up video. We still have the same Daytona, we're using one of our other Superbirds. This is the Superbird I drove to Alaska a couple of years ago and on to Key West, so it's been traveled an awful long time. Future stories coming on that. I thought maybe we would start by pointing out, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 different changes, or differences rather, between the Daytona and the Superbird that maybe you know, maybe you don't know. If you get them all, you're great, and if you don't get any, I wouldn't worry too much about it. That means you have some kind of outside life. So let's start here with the very first one. An obscure fact, down here to where the hood lanyards tie in to the tie downs on the hood. On a Daytona, there are 3 chrome screws and one, I don't know, it's not really chrome, it's an anodized screw that hold it down. So you don't have 4 chrome screws, you have 3 chrome and 1 anodized. As I mentioned in a previous video on the Daytona, these lanyards actually screw onto the top of the hold down brackets themselves. Let's move over here to the Superbird. On the Superbird, we have 4 chrome screws, and as I also mentioned in the first video, the lanyards themselves actually tie to the tie-down brackets underneath the hood that are mounted to the top of the radiator. Now, while we're up here to the front, let me show you a couple of other things, kind of some obscure stuff. How do you open the hood on these? In '69, on the Daytona, all you did was you unhooked the hood lanyards, you lifted, and there's only one little safety bracket underneath, right here, okay? Now that's the Daytona. There were no other additional items. On the Superbird, you also unhooked the hood lanyards. A 2-step process underneath the hood. You had this pull the safety valve to get underneath. Not big differences, but they are differences. A third thing that I thought we would point out is differences in the horn. In the Superbird, you have one famous purple beep beep horn. Matt, you want to hit that one? You want to hit that one? All right, so on the Superbird, there's one horn. It is the Roadrunner beep horn. Matt's going to pop that real quick. There we go. On the Daytona, they have 2 normal sounding, just regular sounding horns on them. Okay? Not big differences, but certainly differences. While we have the engine compartment open, let's talk about the engines. On a Daytona, there were 2 engine options. You either had the 426 Hemi with 2 4-barrels. You could get either an automatic or a 4-speed behind it. Or you could get a 440 with 1 4-barrel. That's what this one is. Our orange Daytona that we finally got started here a couple of months ago, it's a 426 Hemi with 2 4-barrels. So on a Daytona, you had 2 engine options, 426 Hemi with 2 4s or a 440 with 1 4. There were no 6-pack options made. There are 1 or 2 6-pack Daytonas around, but these were dealer-added options after the fact, so none were actually made. Moving over here to the Superbird, and the Superbird, there were 3 options. You could get the 426 Hemi with 2 4-barrels. That's the one we have in our purple psychedelic Superbird. You could get the 444 barrel, like this one has on it, or you could get a 446 barrel, the 3 2-barrel carburetors, they called it the 6-pack. Neither car had the fresh air option available. Although the Roadrunners had a fresh air option, you may have seen it, a little about 1-foot square thing popped up in the center of the hood on 70. That was not available. In fact, it was not allowed on a Superbird for whatever reason that may have been. Other differences while we're in the engine compartment, nothing really significant. The B-body cars from 68 to 70 were essentially the same cars. The Daytona is built, of course, on a Charger, 1969 Charger frame, an RT version. The Superbird's built on a 1970 Roadrunner, but the underlying frame and engine's pretty much the same. Now, one other little thing in the engine compartment, really unusual. Let's look at these. These are called anti-rappers. These are a little rubber part that fit between the inner fender and the hood. So when you're driving, the hood doesn't rattle around. On a Daytona, they got 3 of them. One back by the hinge, one here in the front, and then one in front of the front radiator support. So there's 3 of them. On the Superbird, there's only 2 of them. And on the Superbird, you'll note that the one up here in the front is not present. You still have one back here by the spring, one in the front of the engine compartment, and then none in front of it. Obscure little difference, but something you might be aware of. Let's see, while I'm in here, anything else significant? No, let's go to the interior. Let's talk about one of the big differences between the Daytona and the Superbird. Again, your real knowledgeable people are knowing this already, but for the rest of us, just in case, on a Superbird, you had 2 interior color options, black or white. You could get any color you wanted as long as it was black or white, right? No other interior options. On a Daytona, you could get any interior color that was available to a conventional Dodge Charger. So there are coppered color ones, there's the red interiors, there's black, there's white, there's various colors available. So Superbird, you had 2 interior color options, black or white. Daytona, you could get any interior option color that was available on a conventional Charger. Let's move to the back of the car, but before I do that, let me mention a couple of other unusual things. The Dodge Charger Daytona, as I said in one of our other videos, they made approximately 500. 503 is the accepted number nationwide. Now here's how these worked. Chrysler Corporation actually contracted with an outside third-party company called Creative Industries. Chrysler shipped Dodge Charger RTs to Creative Industries, who fabricated, painted, and attached the nose, the wing, and made the other changes. And yes, I am going to show you the rear plug and the trunk supports and the wing support here in a couple of minutes. In 1970, because they needed more Superbirds, roughly 2,000, the accepted number of Superbirds is either 1,920 or 1,935. No one will ever know for sure. And for real Superbird fanatics, they'll argue about the number. Let's just say a little bit less than 2,000. Well, that was a little bit different. Here's how the Superbirds were made. They took the Plymouth Roadrunner, a 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner, and they had the third-party parts, the wing and the nose, made by Creative Industries, but the car was actually not assembled by Creative Industries. So the Daytona was assembled, fabricated, and painted the additional parts by a third party, where the Superbird was actually assembled. The car came off the conventional Hamtramck assembly line, used the parts assembled and painted, fabricated, assembled, and painted by Creative, but then they sent the car to another Chrysler plant at Clare Point, where Chrysler assembled the final Superbird. So Daytonas were assembled finally off-site, and the Superbirds were assembled on-site using third-party fabricated parts. The noses and wings were painted, the cars are painted in enamel. The noses, the wings were painted using a lacquer, and over time you will see on original paint cars, you will see some paint differences if they've been out in the sun much, because of course they weather differently, enamel versus a lacquer paint job. Now back to the wings and the stripes back here on the back of the cars. On a Superbird, the lettering of Plymouth was available in one of 2 colors, black or white. No other colors available. On a Daytona, you had actually 3 colors of stripes available. Now, this is not a stripe. This is where the stripe covers through and the original paint is underneath. On the Daytona, you had black, white, or red available. So on a Superbird, you had black or white, and it's actually a decal that's affixed on the outside. On a Daytona, the stripe is the decal, and the stripe could be black, white, or red, and you'd see the actual paint coming through from underneath. Let's go to the back of the car and talk about some of the unique differences back here. Okay, on the trunks of the Daytona and the Superbird, as we told you, we were going to show you the wing supports that are welded into the undersides of the fenders. We have those in accompanying image. The actual trunks themselves, no significant differences. I did point out one difference way back when we did one of the other videos. On the Daytona, the jack is red and it's mounted on the driver's side with a slightly different tie down. On the Superbird, the jack is black and it's mounted on the passenger side. Don't ask me why, but I've got a reason why. because on the Daytona, the fuel tank inlet comes from up here on the side. I think they figured that the jack would fit under there without utilizing some extra trunk space, where on the Superbird, the gas tank inlet comes in behind the back license plate. By the way, that has been and continues to be a royal pain in the rear to fill gas in a Superbird or any 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner. The jacks themselves, now those special jacks, the red or the black jack, those were for the front nose. And the rear jack is a conventional bumper jack mounted both the Superbird and the Roadrunner. They're just a conventional rear bumper jack. On the Daytona, on a Daytona, the jack is mounted over here with the conventional front nose jack. On a Superbird, it's mounted under the rear tire. Both rear wings are adjustable. We had somebody say, no, they weren't adjustable. Really? Do you own a whole bunch of these like I do? Yes, they are adjustable. There is an Allen wrench adjustment here. I have turned a few of them. I have had people sitting on the back. Yes, the rear wing is adjustable on street models as well. As far as the back of the car, nothing else really back here, so we'll move on. As promised, this is the rear window plug. This is an original Chrysler part. This is not an aftermarket. This is a rear window plug for 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona. These plugs do not fit the 1970 Superbird, and let me explain why. On the Daytona, if you look very carefully, it's a flat piece of glass. What Chrysler did was they would literally cut out the original sail panel and back glass area and replace it with this plug. They had Creative Industries welded in, they did a good job, they painted it, etc., and then they had the special glass. The rear glass is not interchangeable between a Daytona and a Superbird. It is not. All right, this rear glass is very flat. All right, now on the Daytona, then they cut out the rear end and they put this rear plug in. Let's move over to the Superbird. The Superbird is a little bit more beveled. I don't know if that's the right word. A curved, convex. But they did a much cheaper way on the Superbird. On the Superbird, they left in the rear package tray and the rear window mount of the conventional Roadrunner, and instead just welded a plug on the top. In fact, people that own the Superbirds and have owned them a long time, they will tell you one of the most common rust areas is in the old window mount frame that's down underneath here. And if you can crawl all the way up in the trunk, you can still see it up in there. The old package tray and the window trays there, and they tend to rust down in there. So they did a quicker, cheaper way with the Superbird. They didn't cut anything out. They just didn't put the glass in. They welded a different plug in on the top. Okay, so there's your plug. Let's show you that one more time. No, it doesn't weigh a whole lot. Here's the inside of that plug. And as I said, this is not an aftermarket. This is actually an original Chrysler NOS part that I had. I've got several rear window glasses. You can't hardly find them. And here's the front. I'm going to say it weighs about 35 or 40 pounds. Not a great big fancy piece of metal. As I move back to the engine compartment, there's one other thing I forgot to show you. I want to show you, but as I move back to it, I want to tell you one of these other things, that this is a big difference. And, you know, again, you're really knowledgeable people know it. With the Dodge Charger Daytona, they only had a bucket seat available. You could not get a bench seat. You did see some buckets with what's called a buddy seat, but you had only bucket seats available. In a Superbird, you had buckets with or without a console, and you also had a bench seat. This white Superbird is a bucket seat. The green Superbird we have in the first video is a bench seat. And again, the buckets you could get with or without a console, 4-speed or automatic, both available. The bench seat you could get automatic on the column, or you could get 4-speed on the floor. Now we're going to show you one other thing. This one is big, overlooked by a lot of people. It's in the engine compartment. Let me finish up there. The last thing I thought I'd talk about in our part 2 of additional differences between a Daytona and a Superbird is something under the hood, and it's the voltage regulator. In 1969, we utilized a rectangular old-style mechanical voltage regulator. You can see it underneath there. That is not an original on this car. That is an aftermarket that we've replaced. The voltage regulator was mounted upside down. Seriously, if you saw one, the numbers would be upside down. They're going to have a part number and a manufacturing code. For example, the one in the orange Daytona was manufactured, I don't remember, somewhere in 1968. All right, so on the Daytona, they used an old mechanical voltage regulator. On the Superbird, they used a rectangular, fully electronic voltage regulator, and it's about 2 inches by 3 inches. It is also mounted on the firewall. It's not upside down. That is not an original. It's an aftermarket made to look like an original, but I do have some originals around here in the office. Well, for this week's video, that kind of brings us to the end. What I would like to do is ask you a couple of things. Tell us some ideas of what you'd like to see in the future. What we're thinking about on the next batch is to do a 2 or 3 part series on the Alaska trip in this bird. I bought this is the first Superbird I had. I've had it many years, and I did drive it to Alaska. We can throw you a bunch of pictures in there. Had some great stories in that one. We have the green Superbird that was in another video that we haven't talked about. This yellow Daytona, they all have stories. And there's a yellow 6-back Superbird. So you tell us what you'd like to hear, and we'll make sure that's what we talk about next time. The guys want to do one video just of the shop and the parts room. Might do that for you. Hey, I was at the Chrysler Nationals a couple of weeks ago. Thank you everybody that stopped by, looked at the cars, had a great time. So here at Jennings Wing Cars, for all of us, you know, it's great doing this. I know we don't do it every week, but we do them whenever we get a chance to come over here to the shop and get all 3 of us over here doing it. So thank you so much for watching. I'm Bob Jennings. Behind the camera is Ryan Jennings and Matt Johnson. We're all here to happily answer your questions. If you're in southern Indiana and the doors are open, feel free to stop in. Thanks again. Bob Jennings. See you next time from Jennings Wing Cars.